This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. There's something new tonight in East Germany. Hope. Today, the communist police state backed off at least a bit after a weekend of violent attacks on pro-democracy demonstrators in 6 East German cities. Hundreds of prisoners were released, and Communist Party officials in 2 cities began a dialogue with protest leaders. Still, remember, the hope is fragile. Western diplomats warn that the communist government might just be buying time before cracking down, as the Chinese hardliners did in Beijing last spring. We begin tonight's report on the changing face of communism with Tom Fenton reporting from Berlin.
Tonight, at the church in East Berlin that has become headquarters for the opposition, protest leaders reported that 500 demonstrators arrested over the weekend have been released. An unofficial truce has prevailed since yesterday. Thousands gathered for tonight's protest meeting at Gethsemane Church without police interference. Church leaders have been meeting with party officials to appeal for political and legal reforms. The tide seems to be turning in favor of the demonstrators. There are signs the Communist Party's opposition to reforms is weakening. Riot police stood by without intervening when tens of thousands marched in Leipzig last night shouting, "We are the people." Local party leaders have issued an appeal for a dialogue between the party and the opposition movement. It was also calm today in Dresden as the mayor began a series of unprecedented talks with opposition leaders. In a remarkable proposal reported on West German TV, the mayor said the next national elections in East Germany should be real elections. There are no signs that party leader Erich Honecker approves of any of this. His last word on the subject of reforms in a meeting with Chinese officials yesterday is that they're not needed. Meanwhile, the exodus of young East Germans from Honecker's workers' paradise is continuing. 600 to 800 a day are fleeing, many of them via Hungary. All of this is highly embarrassing for Honecker. The exodus and mass protests have thoroughly discredited his regime. And now that middle-level party officials are calling for compromise, he's beginning to look isolated. That raises the question of how long he can hang on before he is dumped by his own party. Tom Fenton, CBS News, West Berlin.
Poland, of course, historically has been caught between Germany and the Soviet Union. Poland's new solidarity-led government warned today of a harsh winter ahead with blackouts, food shortages, and skyrocketing prices. As correspondent Bert Quint reports, economic woes are only one part of the grim legacy following 40 years of communism in Poland.
For nearly half a century, Poland's communists buried their crimes along with their victims. Now, suddenly, the day of reckoning is at hand. For the first time in Eastern Europe, the party that thought it owned the nation is being forced to answer questions like, what happened to 3 dissident priests who died mysteriously this year? An investigating commission of the Solidarity-dominated parliament thinks Poland's Ministry of Internal Affairs, which controls the brutal riot police and the Polish equivalent of the KGB, is responsible for the priests' death and the deaths of at least 90 other opponents of the regime. Investigators also are looking into ways the Communist Party provides its members with the good life while soup kitchens open throughout the country. 2 Solidarity parliamentarians talked their way into a forbidden oasis of privilege, a plush resort guarded by special troops. They grilled the area's administrative and military chief about accusations that local landowners were evicted, leaving deserted villages so this haven for party brass could be built. This abuse of power by the Communist Party pervades Polish life. Spacious homes for party bigwigs while millions of Poles can't find an apartment. Special hospitals with the only modern equipment in the country. Shops where the communist elite doesn't have to stand on lines like these. Even subsidized vacations at Polish resorts. They are party faithful. And for all these years, the Polish people have been cheated so the Communist Party could reward its followers. And it's only now that the public is learning where the party gets its money. It turns out the party used its power to take over state concerns and form one of Poland's biggest enterprises. It runs it as a private business, not for the nation, but for its own profit, and it's tax exempt. This enterprise produces 90% of Poland's books, newspapers, and magazines and operates 35,000 stands selling 5,000 items, including the cigarettes that are a state monopoly. The company also owns Interpress, the agency whose services foreign journalists must use and pay for. That means news organizations like CBS help subsidize not Poland, but Poland's Communist Party. Now that the facts are coming out, the next question is the new Democratic government strong enough to end the long, free ride of Poland's communists? Bert Quint, CBS News, Warsaw.
The Secretary of State for the United States of America, James Baker, is standing by now live to talk with us from the State Department in Washington. Mr. Secretary, with the fast pace of change in the communist world, is there a danger of events spinning out of control?
Well, there's always a danger, Dan, that a regime such as that in East Germany could resort to repression or the use of force to try and put down peaceful demonstrators. It's our solidly held view, of course, that use of force is not going to be an answer to the problems of that regime. It's time for perestroika to come to East Germany.
When you last spoke with Mr. Shevardnadze on a Face the Nation appearance, you said he told you, Shevardnadze, we will never crack down, meaning the Soviet Union. Do you believe him?
What he said was that we do not think the answer is to use force to suppress peaceful dissent. I have no reason to disbelieve him until it turns out not to be true. In fact, he suggested that the use of force in a situation like that would mean that perestroika had failed.
Mr. Secretary, you're aware that there are people, and not all of them Democrats, who say, listen, I like George Bush, he's experienced in foreign policy, but he seems to be dithering and dawdling on this whole question of the changing face of communism. Can you address that kind of criticism?
Well, I'm not sure that criticism is valid. Let me address it here. We have been addressing that issue beginning with the 40th anniversary of the NATO summit, the strengthening of the NATO alliance, the President exerting his leadership of the alliance. We're dealing with it on a daily basis now in our East-West relations. You're aware of our response to the events in Poland and Hungary. We like to see that reform process move forward. We're prepared to assist economically, improve our relations with those countries that do move forward toward political pluralism and to more of an open society from an economic standpoint. We simply hope that countries like East Germany will opt for that approach rather than moving backwards to the approach that's failed communist regimes in the past, the approach of repression by force.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for being with us live tonight. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, correspondent Bruce Hall on the Space Shuttle Atlantis as critics try a court abort. And Peter Van Sant on the English circles that don't square with science.
I was gulping a hot dog when my little superstar made an unbelievable goal. I gave that ref a piece of my mind, but it went to my stomach. It was a Malox moment. I took Extra Strength Malox Plus, strongest antacid there is. My doctor recommended it. I need the strongest with my husband, the ref.
Nobody's perfect.
Write us about your Malox moments. Extra Strength Malox Plus, strong relief for all your Malox moments.
Last year, 6 million people bought a refrigerator 1 year too soon. Introducing the new refrigerator from Maytag. Buy one now, and if it stops working before the year 2000, we'll buy it back. See your Maytag dealer for details. See a Maytag repairman in our commercials. The new refrigerator from Maytag. The dependability people.
When my arthritis pain acts up, even little things are a big effort. But I don't take aspirin anymore. I take Advil. Advil is the brand many doctors recommend for hours of relief from minor arthritis pain. You know, just one Advil is as effective as 2 regular aspirin. And Advil doesn't upset my stomach the way aspirin sometimes can. So now, I don't even have to think about arthritis. Advil, tablets and caplets, advanced medicine for pain.
Space Shuttle cliffhangers tonight on the launch pad and in court. Either one a threat to Thursday's scheduled launch of the great Space Shuttle Atlantis, a mission to launch the spacecraft Galileo on a journey to explore the planet Jupiter. NASA lawyers are fighting a suit by environmentalists who insist Galileo's nuclear fuel is dangerous. NASA troubleshooters are dealing with an engine computer problem away from the courts. Correspondent Bruce Hall has the latest from the Cape and from the court.
A federal judge is trying tonight to decide whether the plutonium-powered payload aboard the space shuttle is safe enough to launch. Lawyers for 3 environmental groups asked federal judge Oliver Gash to block the launch. saying there's a high probability of an accident that could release plutonium in the atmosphere. However, Justice Department lawyers argued that plutonium has flown safely on 22 previous rocket flights and survived at least one in-flight explosion. But the environmentalists are not convinced.
If there should be an accident in which that plutonium was dispersed either directly over Florida or into the atmosphere, you have a potential for tens of thousands of cancer deaths.
Federal safety experts have spent nearly a decade and $50 million exposing plutonium canisters to crash tests, explosions, and burning. NASA's conclusion? The plutonium generators could survive any shuttle accident.
The Galileo generators, the parts of them that contain the plutonium material, have successfully survived pressures 10 and more times higher than were present in the Challenger.
Despite NASA assurances, a small group of anti-nuclear protesters still vows it will try to stop Thursday's shuttle liftoff by sneaking into the launch pad area if necessary.
I think, frankly, it'll be very difficult to get that close, but we will definitely try.
More than 200 heavily armed security guards are patrolling the Space Center with orders to stop anyone infiltrating the Florida Oceanside launch site by boat, plane, or on foot. Meanwhile, NASA managers have problems of their own. A computer that controls one of the main engines has malfunctioned in several tests on the launch pad. If that happens during launch, it could create major problems.
It shut down an engine when you didn't want to shut down an engine, which would put you in abort condition.
Officials will make a final decision on the computer in the morning. If it has to be replaced, launch will be postponed for several days, regardless of the judge's ruling on the plutonium safety issue. Bruce Hall, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
The dispute, as Bruce Hall mentioned, centers around plutonium pellets. Pellets just a little smaller than this golf ball. Now, they are in the plutonium power packs, which are located here and here for the Galileo spacecraft. The generators containing about 49.5 pounds of plutonium in these two places. NASA points to all the precautions it has taken, starting with fashioning the plutonium into the hard ceramic pellets. These are the things about the size of a golf ball, pellets that won't dissolve in water or turn into dust that could be inhaled. The plutonium pellets are encased in hard, heat-resistant metal, the kind used to make pinpoints. 2 pellets are then sealed in another hard, heat-resistant capsule. Then, pairs of capsules are put into sleeves, and then into additional heat shield modules. And then the modules are put end to end, surrounded by 70 more layers of insulation. All this, NASA insists, makes danger to the public from radioactive fallout minimal, even in the event of a shuttle launch disaster. Environmentalists insist NASA is lowballing the risk. This question of science is now in the hands of a court and subject to a legal opinion on whether Shuttle Atlantis and Project Galileo will fly.
Norman, what's that?
Nothing, honey.
I asked a simple question. Norman, are you eating something?
It's nothing, honey.
He lies like a dog.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch. Crisp golden flakes glazed with sweet honey and real roasted peanuts.
Irene, what's that you're playing?
Nut and honey. 2 can play this little game.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch.
It's happening now. The Crab Lovers Festival at Red Lobster. King crab from icy Arctic waters, steaming, succulent. Delicate snow crab to dip, drip, and savor. And now get your taste of our sweet, meaty Pacific Dungeness. We've created 8 crab and seafood combinations starting at just $6.95. They're here now and only at Red Lobster. Friday through Sunday, try our crab and shrimp special, just $10.95.
Originally, I was taking aspirin for my headaches. Aspirin would sometimes irritate my stomach. And I called the doctor, and he told me to try Tylenol. It wouldn't cause the stomach irritation that aspirin can. Tylenol really worked for me. It got rid of my headaches. I didn't have any problems after I took Tylenol.
Lana Carson trusts Tylenol. Its pain reliever is in a class by itself.
It's a wonderful pain reliever for me, and it works great.
Florida became the newest focus of the nation's abortion debate today, a special session of the state legislature. Correspondent Bruce Morton reports tonight from Tallahassee, the latest center of legal, emotional, and political fallout from the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in July, making it easier for states to restrict abortions.
Bob Martinez, have no doubt, we'll work hard to vote you out.
Dawn at the anti-abortion governor's mansion. Pro-choice demonstrators say they'll beat him in next year's election.
Pro-life! Pro-life! For the unborn!
An hour or so later, a mile or so away, anti-abortion demonstrators mourn at a cemetery where they say more than 700 fetuses are buried. A day for emotion, symbols, flags, and songs. The pro-choice forces staged their big march and rally this morning, and anti-abortionists who marched last night watched and occasionally tried their own chants.
The world's eyes are on you, and the world's eyes are on Governor Martinez. Government, stay out of our private lives.
God bless you, Governor.
Anti-abortion demonstrators were telling the governor, "We love you."
Thank you, thank you.
Once or twice, the two groups traded words, though the day never turned violent.
You kill women!
So both sides have turned out their supporters trying to swing the legislature their way on this wrenching, emotional issue. An issue a lot of the legislators wish would just go away.
They win some and they actually lose some too, and enrage some. So I think that for the most part, lawmakers in general don't necessarily look for opportunities to enrage the public.
Secretary will lock machine and announce the presence of a quorum.
But the legislators can't avoid it, and this afternoon they began grappling with the issue.
I think we all would like to do our job here and go home.
The Senate will act first, leaders have agreed, and this afternoon a Senate committee voted down the first restrictive bill, which would have required a waiting period before an abortion.
Chairman Weinstock. No. And so the bill fails.
Pro-choice leaders hope the restrictive bills will all lose in committee. The key votes will probably come tomorrow. In the meantime, emotions continue to run high. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Tallahassee.
President Bush tonight accepted an invitation to a so-called drug summit issued by the presidents of the main cocaine-producing frontline states, Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru. They said they'd like to hold it within 90 days. Exact date, place, and agenda still to be worked out.
Attention shredded wheat eaters, you've been missing something. Taste, but no more. Kellogg's Squares brings you that superlative shredded wheat nutrition with no salt, no fat, no cholesterol. But wait, Kellogg's Squares gives you free in every bite. Taste! Sweet, delectable fruit in the middle. You might never eat plain old shredded wheat again. Kellogg's Squares, shredded wheat with taste, free in every bite. And speaking of taste, now Squares have 35% more raisin. Great taste, free.
My favorite GM car I worked on. Kept it all these years, even after I retired. Every time my son looks at it, he smiles. Very popular at the time, I tell him. My boys at GM now building beauties like this one. One thing hasn't changed. We still build them to last.
GM cars have held their resale value better than any other U.S. make.
In the mountains of Colombia, they celebrate the land for creating the richest coffee in the world. New Maxwell House Colombian Supreme Coffee. Regular, decaffeinated, or instant. 100% Colombian richness in every drop.
America, you're eating foods that are low in cholesterol. Or are you? If you like to cook these foods in butter, you have to add cholesterol. Or do you? Try cholesterol-free butter flavor Pam.
The white minority government of South Africa said today it will free 6 leaders of the outlawed African National Congress, but not Nelson Mandela. The 6 to be released include former African National Congress chief Walter Sisulu. They were all sentenced to life in prison along with Mandela in 1964. A government statement said Mandela's release is, quote, not now on the agenda. Hundreds of volumes have been written about German atrocities in World War II, but there's a new book out that claims to open up a whole new chapter about horrors on the other side. Massive war horrors allegedly committed by U.S. forces against German prisoners of war, or at least allowed by them. A Canadian novelist wrote the book, which is titled Other Losses. It's been published in Canada and now in West Germany, but not so far in the United States. Correspondent Mark Phillips has the story.
This is a story no one wanted to believe. A story of how in 1945, when Allied armies were marching into Germany, taking and holding huge numbers of German prisoners, the U.S. Army, through neglect or incompetence or deliberate policy, withheld food and supplies from its prisoners, causing hundreds of thousands of them to die.
Just the fact that the people are digging graves with bulldozers is of itself very strange. Americans just don't do that.
Or do they? In a new book, James Back makes the astounding claim that German prisoners in U.S. Army camps were allowed to die through a campaign of starvation and deprivation. Back is a novelist, but some of the most respected historians of the period think that by and large, Back's claims are true.
I think Jim Back has made a major historical find here. It is, to me as an American historian, I'm ashamed.
In the spring and early summer of 1945, surrendering German soldiers were herded into barbed wire enclosures by the hundreds of thousands. More than 3 million when General Eisenhower accepted the German surrender. The carnage of war should have been over.
Now, no more killing, no more casualties.
The prisoners should have been given food and shelter in accordance with the Geneva Convention. Instead, many had their legal status changed from POW to DEF, disarmed enemy forces. Instead of full rations, they got starvation rations, or no rations at all.
There was sadism and brutality. There was denial of medical supplies that were available, denial of water in some cases. When they were right on the banks of the Rhine, men died of dehydration.
These prisoners were starved and maltreated in the presence of plenty of food, and that they were kept without shelter.
Bach says that as many as 1 million men may have died in these slow death camps, and that he found his proof here in the National Archives in Washington. Weekly records of German prisoners in all U.S. Army camps show a column called Other Losses. In 1 week in September 1945, for example, 18,000 other losses. Bach quotes a colonel in charge of German affairs in Allied headquarters at the time as saying other losses meant a small number of escapes and a large number of deaths. A former Army historian who helped with the research came to the reluctant conclusion that Bach was right.
What happened is the crime is the thing to be regretted. Whether it was 500,000, 900,000, or 1 million, the enormity is still the same.
Wolfgang von Richthofen was a captured tank officer in 1945. He was held in an enclosure with 2,500 officers and saw the bodies of the dead carried out daily.
Up to 15 even a day. So that is a percentage of, in a year, everybody would have died.
While very few soldiers in the camps were SS troops, regular German conscripts may have been forced to pay the price for the horrors that were being discovered in the concentration camps.
It was a flash of anger that these guys were feeling. A flash of anger brought on more than anything else by seeing the concentration camps.
The Army has refused to comment thus far on Bach's claims, but disputes his research, saying other losses does not just mean deaths. Dan, you have to put this into context. In Europe in the spring of 45, there were millions, perhaps as many as 10 million displaced persons, refugees, former slave laborers in German camps, and POWs. They all had to be fed and looked after. The transportation system had been destroyed. It was a logistical nightmare, and record-keeping wasn't all it should have been either. The book has stirred historians, and arguments will continue over Bach's figures, over Eisenhower's role, and over whether the conditions in the camps were accidental or deliberate. Dan?
Thanks, Mark. A spokesman for President Bush confirmed today that more than a dozen liters of last week's attempt at overthrowing Manuel Noriega in Panama have been flown by the United States to safety in Florida.
You ever run up against a tough sinus cold? As tough as it gets, maximum strength Dristan is tougher. To sweep away congestion, pressure, and pain. And it won't make you drowsy. When you can't call in sick, call on Dristan.
There's a motor oil that says it's engineered for today's smaller cars, like sports cars. But is that motor oil the first choice of the members of the Sports Car Club of America? No. Valvoline is the first choice of the members of the Sports Car Club of America. Valvoline makes the highest quality motor oil recommended by any automobile manufacturer. People who know use Valvoline.
Getting out and enjoying yourself, that's what life is all about. And it's easy when you have the best bladder control protection. Depend Undergarments has special layers of absorbency that won't bunch or sag, and elastic legs for a better fit. They're the best protection and the best way for you to get back into life. Hey there.
Get back into life with Depend.
I got a flat tire. Now my stomach's on fire. My day. My Lanta 2.
Introducing My Lanta 2 roll packs for double strength antacid relief wherever you are.
Because my life takes my Lanta 2.
An official Soviet government news agency has reported that a UFO landed recently near Moscow, complete with 10-foot-tall aliens from space. The reporter said his source was a group of children, and a scientist said, "Don't believe everything you read in TASS." Some people in Britain are convinced that UFOs are causing strange new patterns on English farmland. Other puzzled experts are simply going around in circles, as Peter Van Sant explains.
In the misty valleys of southern England, where mysterious circular formations from a lost civilization remain, where ancient burial mounds and strange antiquities dot the countryside, there lurks a new riddle which confounds scientist and citizen alike.
It's just one of those things that I can't explain. I think even some of the experts are baffled by it.
The mystery is the appearance of hundreds of these circles, some of them 30 feet across, where crops have been perfectly spun into the ground with an eerie precision that has left people scratching their heads.
It's just the sheer power, the actual size is just absolutely incredible. It's just overpowering the amount of force that must be required to flatten the corn down like that.
The crop circles first appeared in 1975, but recently they have grown dramatically in number. 260 have been spotted so far this year, and no one knows who or what is causing them.
The more I've studied this, the more the problems that I have encountered. The mystery has deepened more and more.
Something very different is happening here. This is something very different.
Engineer Colin Andrews has been studying the mystery rings for 6 years. Andrews says each circle has its own energy field, which he measures with divining rods.
There we go. That's the precise center of the circle, where the energies are actually still imploding.
Andrews believes there may be some kind of alien life behind these perfect circles, and he says their location near ancient landmarks may be more than a coincidence.
The dimensions of these circles relate too closely to the dimensions of those ancient sites to be ignored.
One of the more unusual groupings, nicknamed the Crucifix, appeared one night in Jim Pickford's field.
I can't pinpoint why they come. I mean, when we walked through the field, I stood in one of the circles and said, "Beam me up, Scotty," but nothing happened.
The theory that UFOs are making the circles is a popular one. Jack and Pat Collins claim they saw a giant wheel of lights floating above a field.
Well, I thought it was something from outer space because, as I say, there's nothing up on Stockbridge Down otherwise.
The crop circles have spun a mystery that no one yet has solved. Scientists from 4 countries are studying the phenomenon, but they're looking for clues in a countryside where questions like this have remained unanswered for thousands of years. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Avebury, England.
And that's part of our universe tonight. Dan Rather, see you tomorrow. Good night.
This is CBS.